Hello, and welcome to another of InstallFree's training sessions. This is Jonathan from InstallFree, and this is the first video of two in which we will configure the InstallFree bridge for multi-location access, which is one of the options in the Advanced Connection Configuration Setup phase. Please note that this procedure cannot be performed without finishing the previous phase of enabling the Connection Manager, as the Connection Manager is at the heart of any advanced connection setup. Now, before we go ahead and configure the Connection Manager, we will have to go through two preliminary steps. The first will be to create a new file share on the second branch's file server with a DFS or a similar method synchronizing them. And afterwards, I will implement a new logon script for our second branch users, and only then will I configure the Connection Manager, which in my case will be set according to an IP address-based rule, which will instruct the bridge to connect to one of the file shares according to the endpoint's IP address. But before I begin, let's start with a quick look on my demo environment. So first I have this main file server here, which will represent the file server present in my main branch, and on it I already have a fully configured InstallFree file share. Next, I have this secondary file server, which will represent a file server situated in my second branch, and this here is its computer name, which I will use later in a few places. Now, I also have two endpoints, each representing an endpoint in each of our branches. The first is this Windows XP desktop, which represents the endpoints on my main branch, and its IP address that you see now will represent the IP address range of my main branch, and I will use this IP address later in my Connection Manager rule. And lastly, the Windows 7 machine, which represents the endpoints on my second branch, with the following IP address, which will represent the IP address range of the second branch. And now, let's go on and start my two preliminary steps, and the first is to create a duplicate file share. Now, since we're talking about two different branches in different locations, we will of course use two file shares, and if you have more than two branches, then you should do the following procedure for each consecutive branch. So let's switch to my second file server. Now, at this point, what you should do in a production environment is to use a DFS or a similar method in order to create a synchronized folder which will replicate the original InstallFree file share found on the main branch file server. This will enable the second branch users to get their components from their own file share on the file server closest to them. And to simulate this in my demo environment, I will simply copy all the files from my main file server to the second branch file server. So I've got here a link to my InstallFree file share on my main branch file server. Now, when I create a synchronized folder replica, I have two options. The first is to create a full identical replica of all the files found in my main file share. This will allow local administrator on my second branch to work with their own IFMC locally without connecting from their remote location. You might also want to create an administrator role that will allow the second branch administrator to do only certain things like allocate IFV applications and manage only users found in his own branch. On the other hand, we usually recommend creating a DFS or a synced file share using only the user's subfolder here, while including only the AODs, data, engines, and system folders, and the rest of the files and folders can be discarded. Now, this option limits the number of folders synced, and so it's more efficient in terms of size and speed, but it also means that the IFMC can be ran only from the main branch, since that is the only place it's physically at, although it can be used remotely by simply connecting to the main file share with adequate permissions. But in any case, for this demo, I will simply copy the entire file share to my second branch file server. Now I'll just make sure all the permissions are set as they are in the main file share. So first I'll take care of the InstallFree folder itself. And set everyone as reader, and in your case you can of course limit it only to bridge users. And next I'll make sure the data folder is shared for read and write access. And you can see everyone is marked as co-owner, so I'll click share, done. And now I'm basically good to go, but remember that in principle, if you wish, you can duplicate only the users folder and under it the AODs, data, engines, and system folders. Next, let's add a new logon script for my second branch. So I'll launch my Active Directory, and as you can see here, I have my main domain controllers, which for our demo will represent the main branch. And down here I've created a new OU called second branch with a single user also called second branch. And later in the video I will use this user to demo the login from the second branch. Okay, so now let's go ahead and create a new logon script for our second branch. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is I will use the original logon script files already implemented in my domain controllers. So I'll click Show Files, and next I'll copy the original logon script files into this folder. And I have a shortcut to the original logon script folder here, which directs me to the original folder. So I'll open it and copy all the files to my new logon scripts folder. But now I will have to instruct the bridge's logon script to access the InstallFree File Share users folder on my second server, and for that I will edit the get user bridge path CFG. And I will replace the path from my main branch server to my second server's name. Although if you're using a DFS for instance, you should type here your DFS namespace. So I'll click Save, close this, click the Add button here, and click Browse to add the bridge batch file to the logon script. Okay, so now we're done with the logon script, and in the next video we will configure the connection manager and check to see how it all works on the endpoints. Thank you all for watching.